Welcome everyone to Enlightened World Network. I am Deb Goldberg and our show today is Divine Relationship Recovery, and thank you for being here with us. I have Jane Mountrose with us. So welcome, Jane.
Thanks, Deb. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here too. Jane and I have done several shows together and it's always a joy. She has a beautiful heart and wisdom to share with everyone. And we have a great show planned for you, but I want to tell you a little bit about Jane before we get started. Jane is a widely recognized pioneer and expert in the fields of life coaching and healing. She's a writer, minister, and trainer with 30 years of experience in spiritual development and powerful techniques for healing. Along with her husband, Phillip, Jane serves primarily as the founding director of Awakenings Institute, a nonprofit organization devoted to creating a more loving world where each individual's unique gifts are honored and nurtured. And so, Jane, I would also really love for you to talk about Awakenings Institute a little bit and let people know more about you and what you and Phillip do.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking about it that we came to kind of the birth of Awakenings Institute in the same way that you come to this show, that it came from the divine through us, that we actually reached a point in the 1990s where we transitioned from our kind of traditional or conventional professions into healing and started teaching programs and courses. And it was one of those things where one thing led to another. And just with the deepening, I guess, of our awareness of what we were doing and the enthusiasm we had and the appreciation we had for the students in our programs as being they were being people who were sharing love with the world through us. It evolved into a mission, and that's how Awakenings Institute came to us, with a mission of creating a more loving world where the gifts that each individual brings are honored and nurtured. Awakenings Institute, in essence, is a church, actually. Formally, with the IRS, it's a church. It's a spiritual organization that we wanted to be organized as a church because we work with healers and feel that those who are doing spiritual work in many ways and many times can benefit from being ministers. So you can be a healing minister. There are many things that ministers do, and one of them is healing, which was at the time when we became ordained actually as ministers, that we did it primarily because we were healers and we wanted to have the protection of the division between church and state in the United States. So it's evolved from there and actually broadened out. Now we do a lot of trainings. We have within the Institute, we have about 40 ministers. So there's a lot happening with Awakenings Institute. And we still, over the years, I think our dedication to our mission just deepens, if anything. And it really is, to me, all of it is about love, in essence. That recognizing that the essence of who we are and what life is about is love.
Well, I totally agree. And it is such a beautiful mission that you two both have, and provide for others to really heal and tap into their own divine calling. Or
right.
Their ministry, however you want to call that. It is beautiful. So thank you for all that you do.
And thank you for all that you do.
And it is awesome to have you here because I know that the two of us kind of parallel each other in what we think is really important.
Right.
And that is divine love. And that's the essence of this show, of divine relationship recovery is about yourself. It's about your relationship with God. It's about your relationship with others. And it has morphed into a show where God is now dictating and giving me all the talking points for each show, which is just awesome because I don't really have to work at it. It's just given to me, and I'm actually then sharing and discussing what he wants all of us to be aware of. So today's topic is walking in kindness. And I thought, wow, that's a great topic for right now, too. It's so apropos based on what's going on in the world. Although we could say that often, but it feels that way right now, and that kindness would be something to work on. But I like the way that he describes this. So let's start off with the first couple of sentences that he gave me. And he said, what does it mean to walk in kindness? He said, it means understanding that you're walking in a state of grace all the time, whether you feel it or know it. And grace is provided for you as part of my covenant with you.
Okay. There's a lot there.
Every sentence or two, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's a whole show you can talk about.
Right. Yeah, it's beautiful. And to me, I think reading it, you gave me some of the notes beforehand. There is a question of what does grace mean? And I was thinking, to me, grace means that we have the connectedness with God and the support and protection and love of God. And that actually it's the interesting thing in society is that the illusion is that we are separate and alone. Mm-hmm. And everything in our reality relates to that if we're separate and alone, that reality is our life is dangerous, and the idea of grace, that it transforms our perspective on what reality is about. Mm-hmm. If we believe that we're here, and I think when I do healing personally, a lot of times, and I may not even express it to clients, I see them in the arms of God. Mm. It's like the healing, really the essence of healing is returning. It's actually, you could say, returning to that place of grace, mm-hmm. where they understand that they are in the loving arms of God always. And the illusion is that we're separate. Now, it wasn't all that long ago for me when I realized that, that actually we're always connected with God. It's just that we, in our heads, we somehow separate ourselves from understanding the truth. And we believe, and of course it is the mass belief in our society that we are separate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, it is, and that's really the essence of the whole experience, is returning to that place of understanding that there is no separation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Everything you said is so beautiful and true. Returning home to love, returning home to feeling your divine nature, who you are, what you came from, what you're part of, that is so much bigger than what we see in our physical experience. And grace, I know, walking in grace, it was just interesting that he used the two words together, that walking in kindness is the same as walking in grace, and having grace for other people and for yourself as we keep unfolding and expanding into more of a higher consciousness within ourselves, as we keep growing and returning back home That's what you're talking. So when I look at, we're not really growing into something else. We are growing back into our divine nature,
Right. Right.
remembering.
Right. Yeah. It's like there's the forgetting, and then there's the remembering.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I
And
know
it does. Oh, go ahead.
it's okay. Go ahead.
Just from what you were saying, you were talking about embracing our true identities. And I think that, to me, makes that connection between kindness and grace too, in that when we recognize that we're all magnificent spiritual beings, we're all equally loved and worthy of love, and we're all connected. So when we're in a state of grace, kindness is the natural order.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really, it is, I don't know. I don't know what the word is. It's almost the word that comes as a disgrace. It's kind of, maybe that's the right word. It's a disgrace for us to behave in a way that's unkind to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels that way. Although everything that I have been taught is that everyone is innocent, even in their own disgrace.
Right. It is, but it is a lack of grace. It is through a lack of grace and it is through that illusion of separation that happens, I think.
Right. And so I think that happens is that we don't have that grace because we're not having a relationship with divine love. We're not having a relationship with God. I know for me, in my own experience of awakening, I was taught grace from within because I didn't really have any for myself. And if you don't have it for yourself, it's really hard to have it for other people, or that it is not, it's a superficial sense of grace versus really a heartfelt sense of grace.
Yeah, an intellectual idea rather than a true understanding. Yeah.
We're feeling it from your heart space, rather than saying, well, I know that I should not be thinking that right now, so I'm going to be kind and whatever. But it's just more of a being in your heart space and allowing that gracefulness to flow up through you. That is always inside of you.
Right.
So, yeah, it is everyone is walking in grace. And my awakening was having to learn what that was. And it gets all kind of mixed in with the unconditional love and everything. But something I used to say to Jesus, I would say, I'm pretty dense at times. And he would be talking to me and I'd be like, okay, how do you have the patience to do this? Jesus, how do you have the patience to sit here and go through this with me over and over and over again? And really, he was teaching me grace. He was teaching me what it means to be graceful and to learn how then to bring that into my own self. And it's a practice. It's a practice of learning how to stay present in that state of love, and then the grace flows through you.
Right. And I think it is, both of us, I think we've talked about it, we both feel we have a direct connection with God. And I believe, well, I know that we all have that. It's just that we don't all know it. And that is a part of it too, is when it first started happening to me, I doubted myself. I think I used to feel that I was such a flawed human being that I was ashamed spiritually. And I felt unworthy of it. And it was very confusing to me, which it took some time for me to get over in that. And part of it was just kind of saying, well, throw caution to the wind, like, okay, he says he's God, I'll go with it. I mean, that's where it started. It was well, you probably had some doubts about what you were listening to also. And it is only through time that it deepens into just, it is just being part of recognizing that's the truth, and letting go of the illusion that we're separate.
Yeah.
And I do understand that as also as a trainer, because we train people, and this is the essence of our training, really, is to come back to that state of wholeness and oneness. That it's a struggle for people, and I know with the pandemic also that people are struggling sometimes with feeling abandoned by God. Like, how can this be happening to us or to me? You know, their specific circumstance. You know, why is God abandoning me?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure lots of people ask that question for so many different situations that we find ourselves in.
Right.
Yeah. But yes, I totally agree. That is actually what I'm here to do, is to teach people that there's a direct connection to God, and to help them connect to that. And when I experienced that as well, I went through the same thing as you did. I didn't feel worthy of it. I didn't understand it. I really didn't understand what God was until I spent enough time with God to understand what God is. And still, God is so expansive that I probably will never understand the extent of what that is. But I do know the goodness of God, and that it is scary because we've all heard so many awful things about what God might be from different types of programming that are out there. And then the ego's playing a role in you believing that you are not worthy. And so that plays a role in actually keeping you from connecting.
Right.
But when you're committed to this path and you want to connect, you keep going back in, and you keep going back in, and you keep going back in, and then your relationship just deepens and deepens and deepens over time, and it unfolds into an amazing mutual relationship.
Right. Yeah. That's what I found too, and it is. I think we just have to be honest about where we are with it too. I think I talk about it very lightly in a way now. You know, it's like when I started, it was really, I had guidance I connected with before God came around, and I had a name for my guide. I was completely satisfied with it. This has been going on for years. Everything was stable. And then all of a sudden, my guide who I had wasn't there anymore. And I went through several different stages before finally I came to the voice being God. But I realized when it did happen, and I think you've suggested this too, you can tell me, I had to confront the word. Like I couldn't, I was given God as the word, not that, you know, it's not the universe or this, you know, whatever. it's God. And that that was something for me to really understand too, that God was telling me that I had to understand who I was talking to and not try to make it into, you know, some other thing that kind of suited me at the time. And I know I remember you mentioning something about that.
Yeah. When you're ready to connect to divine love, it will show up in whatever you will accept. And so we go through stages, and for some people, it will show up as some kind of spirit guide, or a person who's passed on, an angel, saints, all different animals,
relatives.
Yeah. So it will show up as that, because that's where you are in feeling comfortable with that connection.
Right.
And as you get deeper in, or it's your time, because God will just show up when he shows up. And what you start to understand is, first of all, there's a different feeling. I feel it as a very different feeling than I feel Jesus, or I feel angels, or my family who has passed on. So it is important to understand this. It's a process that's happening within you. But it is only God, it is only consciousness that is showing up in these other images as a way for you to finally connect home. And so it's like little pieces pulling you back in as you are more and more comfortable, until you understand there's only one. There's only one energy. It's consciousness. It's divine love, and that's what we're calling God. And God will answer to any name you want to give God. God will answer to any name, because that's what grace is. It's all about you and how your comfortability is, because it's gentle. Divine love is gentle, even when it's knocking on your door and it wants you to open up and have some conversations and start connecting back to home. It's still gentle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, doing healing, it's been, well, I guess the word grace comes to me with that it is, I feel like I'm in a state of grace with the healing too. And I can just see people, like I said, I see people just going into the arms of God. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's the most beautiful thing imaginable.
It is. And that's what I do too, as I'm working with people. And to actually start to feel divine love is something you can't express, and you don't feel it anyplace else outside of you. It's all inside of you. Mm-hmm. And so, to experience that is probably one of my number one things, is helping people experience divine love wherever they will start in their connection, so that they can just keep moving forward into whatever, until they understand that there's a deeper place to go from where they are. There's always a deeper place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a struggle too. I thinking about it today, I was thinking of my childhood, which was, my father was an alcoholic and pretty kind of negative guy. and then I had an older brother they were both large men, and then there was my mother and me, the smaller and of course the fragile sex. And it was like a battleground. Communication was like a battleground. Mm-hmm. And as a result, by the time I was an adult, I became very quiet. And I had a lot of distrust of people, because in the way I was raised, you just never knew when someone was going to attack you, whether it was not necessarily, maybe physically. In my case, it was more emotionally, but I just never knew when that was coming. So looking at anybody, I would always be in that state of alertness. Mm-hmm. Which, and then I'm mentioning, going back to feeling flawed, as I said, I think there is a connection there. And what it takes me to, going around a little bit, is the statement from the Bible, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," which to me has always been very meaningful too, because we judge others as maybe being dangerous because we are judging ourselves. Mm-hmm. And something I found actually that was very helpful for me in, I guess, releasing that and being able to increase my sense of connectedness with other people, was just looking at people and seeing beauty in each person. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, that's the most beautiful person. Like, what is something you see in that person, any person, that you can appreciate? Mm-hmm. And then maybe even share it with them. Mm-hmm. And I started even sharing with people on the street, and I would just feel like, oh, you look so cheerful today, just say whatever. And it always would make me feel so good. Mm-hmm. And I think that for anyone who's kind of struggling with that, of coming out of their shell, I think that's a wonderful way. For me, that really helped.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, the more you do that, I think the more it just becomes part of your nature. It's like you look at people and you see the beauty in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, that's recognizing really the divinity in one another, which is where it all goes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It is beautiful. And what came to my mind is that the more you see yourself as beautiful, the more you can find it in other people, because they're just reflections of you.
Right.
There's no separation like we started to talk about at first. So I think that the more you are graceful with yourself and see yourself as really the beautiful image that you are, the divine nature that you are, and that takes work of not using ego eyes to see yourself, that you're using the divine eyes of the truth of knowing who you are. We have a question here. Let's see. For somebody, Jean is on, and she says, you said something the other day that was so important, Deb. When you will hear what God says, it may be in your own voice. And that made so much sense. And I think sometimes that is what confuses us. Yeah, everybody hears God differently. I had mentioned before, sometimes I happen to hear God in a male voice. I also hear him in my voice. I hear him talk to me in my heart that gets translated into words for me. So there's all these different ways, but God is your voice. It's one in the same. And when you can start to recognize it and it comes through that way, you're right, because you're always thinking that's ego voice or it's some other voice. Because I say we have a peanut gallery inside of us that's always doing this. And where is all those people coming from? That it does come out in your own voice too.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
That I think, and you said this before, that you can feel the difference in the energy. Mm-hmm. So if God, and to me, the energy of God is very distinct. And I've had a connection also with Jesus since I was a child, and that's very distinct to me, and angels. And it's not like you're just waiting to have this connection with God and all of the other stuff doesn't matter. I still have, and I think it's especially in times like this, I feel a strong connection with the angels who are supporting me through all of the things that we're experiencing right now. But it is the energy, like you can feel, and I think that's something you can just sit with it too. Mm-hmm. Is like if you are making a connection like that with God, just sit and feel it, and then ask to be connected with an angel and feel what that feels like. Because I think that as we learn to really understand how and learn to perceive energy, that actually, when I started doing healing work, that was one of the things that really changed everything for me. Because I was an architect, I was, very left brain, logical mind. I never thought I would be any good at this healing stuff. But then I took Reiki and I started feeling energy and sensing energy. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that you can sense energy, like you can put your hand on a tabletop and feel that, you can feel God's energy too. And it has a very distinct characteristic to it.
Certainly does. That's such an important point that you're bringing up, because I don't want to discount any way that you connect with spirit guides, because like I said, I have lots of them. John the Baptist and angels and King Solomon. I'm like, I don't even know where half of these came from. But what God has said to me is, I gave you this support team to use. It's a support team. So it's to me, it's just more love. It's just I'm showing up in all of these other different forms so that you feel so surrounded and so guided and so loved and protected all the time. So it is a great point that you brought that up. All of it is important. However, it does have a different feeling to the energies, and you do know when God is talking to you. You don't even have to question it. You just know it. It's a knowingness in here. I would used to say, you know when your Father's talking to you, because I experience it as male energy, even though I know it's not genderized.
Right. Yeah, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't try to even explain that to myself. It's just that's the way it is for me.
It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, and everybody's having their own unique experience, and all of it is right. So let's go to the second sentence. The more time you spend with me, you start to understand this divine law and learn how to integrate it into your own being. Kindness, grace, is a gentleness within yourself. It is being friendly to and with your own being rather than being hostile. So at first we said, grace is provided you as part of my covenant with you. My covenant is we made a pact with God that we would wake up and remember to come back home. And we were not separate. We said we would wake up and go back home and return back to love, and walk this experience together. And so this is part of the covenant, that there's divine laws. And, you know, when we talk about divine laws, people know it more like the law of manifesting things. And but there is laws. There's a law of grace and protection, and that what the oneness actually means. And so what he's saying here is that when you start to understand how protected you are, regardless of what's happening in your experience as spirit, you are so protected that nothing brings harm to you. And that part of that is grace. Part of the protection is this grace. So I really liked that he's saying that it's a gentleness within yourself, and it is being friendly to, learning how to be friendly to your own being rather than being hostile with it because you're frustrated with yourself, or you're frustrated with the experience, or frustrated with the incarnation. And believe me, I have experienced all of that. All of it. And
right.
So that's a process in itself, is learning that there is this divine nature, this law within you that keeps you balanced at all times, even though you feel like you're out of balance. But this divine law is always in balance, and it is always stable and constant. So let's talk a little bit about how we can learn to be more kind and gentle to ourselves rather than being hostile.
Right. Well, when we understand the truth of who we are, to me, one of the things, when actually it was around 1990, many years ago, my husband and I, when we were looking, and we had been looking for a while for our own source of truth and guidance. And we attended a lot of classes and got intuitive training. We got a lot of different different things, and there was nothing that was just like really on track with it. And then we learned this process, now we call it soul centering, of just connecting with the love in your heart, that actually was it. And that when we connect with the love in our hearts, everything becomes very clear. Mm-hmm. As our hearts become clear. Sometimes there might be, people have sometimes protection around their hearts for different reasons because they've been hurt. And because of that, they may also feel, again, like I did, flawed or unworthy, or, you know, all of those things that are illusions about the truth of who we are. But when we start to connect with that love in our heart, and what I did, I started writing down, I would ask questions and I would write down messages about the truth, about, you know, those big questions like, who am I? You know, why am I here? Where am I going? What, you know, what's this all about? And when we understand the truth of ourselves as being love, really, and being worthy of love, as worthy, like all of us are equally worthy of love, because we're all part of the same oneness. And then it's easier when we can really understand that, and when we can actually work through those illusions of ourselves as being flawed in some way, then we can be more gentle and kind with ourselves and with others. It's reciprocal. I do think that you can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's always the process of receiving and giving going on outside, because it's with everything, because all we are doing is projecting our consciousness outside of ourselves. So as we become more loving and giving, we're going to get more of that back. You're going to see that more in your surroundings,
Your reality, right?
In your reality, yeah. So as you keep shifting, and really you're shifting out of a false self into your divine nature back in. It's like taking all the clutter that was covering your divine nature, and a lot of that is faulty beliefs and experiences that were uncomfortable. And as it just keeps getting stripped away, and God is doing this in you. This is not something that you're tackling on your own and doing all of this work. It is being done. It's an inside job. It's being done within you. And I know for me, it took me years to learn how to be kind to myself. But I don't know. I still work on learning how to get less frustrated with myself, and it's so much better than it ever was.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it probably took me about 4 years of spending so much time with God and Jesus, of actually them role modeling it and giving it to me, and then me being able to adapt it, to take it in, and then really use it on myself. And that's what the process was for me. Somebody had asked if I was a child of an alcoholic, and no, I wasn't. But I had lots of dysfunction and trauma in my growing up. So anytime you have trauma, and that could be of anything, you will get affected in certain ways. Just patterns develop as protection, coping mechanisms to deal with your life as a child. And so that's what we're undoing. That's what God's undoing. God's saying, you don't need this stuff anymore. Get rid of it. I'm here. I'm always here. And the grace is always here for you, no matter what you're doing in every moment of the day, no matter what you're thinking. Because, you know, a lot of times you go through a process of getting upset at what you're thinking in your mind, that it's negative or it's not nice. But there is grace held for you in every single moment, no matter what your thoughts, your actions are, your feelings. And so I think it is really important to remember that. And that is what he's talking about, is that when you really start to understand this protection and what really unconditional love is, it starts to allow you to free yourself some more.
Right. And I think, to me, the way I see the journey is we come down, it's kind of like you come down from the higher realms in a spaceship, and when a spaceship enters the atmosphere, it's like it's really difficult and pieces fall off, you know. So it's like that with us. As we have these difficult experiences, pieces of the self become disconnected from our wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking earlier about, like, there's this whole audience of pieces of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the way I understand that in the healing, the way that we do it, is that those parts have become disconnected from our wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
So the parts, you could say, are the ego, and the ego does transform too. It's the wounded. They're wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they can't understand is because they're disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I look at it is, what we need to do is
Mm-hmm.
reconnect them. So like the wounded inner child,
Yes.
is, and there's more than one of them often in us, those are parts of the self who through wounding have become disconnected from our truth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's interesting, what they need most is love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can hug that child and it just melts back into you.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, and different parts of the self are the same way, that they all become part of the whole again.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So I think we can intervene with healing processes too that can be very effective. And because of that, also the healing energy that we use in our work is spiritual energy.
Mm-hmm.
It is that energy of connectedness,
yes.
that brings those pieces back into your wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as you suggested, the more you do that, and it does take time, the more you feel comfortable. You can just be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be in your body in the moment.
Right.
And from the time Phillip and I, my husband and I, we met really ages us, many decades ago, in a spiritual organization, and the goal of the organization was the main goal was to be in the present moment, which is a great goal. To me, it still is to be in the present moment, because we want to be present to our lives. And we did that for 10 years without really noticing much of a difference. You know, just, it's kind of like you're trying to will it. It's like, I'm going to be in the present moment now. And all of those disconnected selves are squawking and, complaining. And if you're not doing anything to help them, it really doesn't change anything. Mm-hmm. So when we started doing the healing work, I started noticing, well, gee, I'm just so much more comfortable. Now I can breathe a little bit and really feel present and feel connected. It's like, it's very easy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're aiming for. And wherever a person is, if you're feeling that sense of separation, part of you has been wounded that needs to be brought back into your wholeness. Mm-hmm. And it is through kindness also that happens.
Yeah, that's such great points. We are, actually, I'm going to be doing a workshop on a masterclass Saturday on healing the wounded child. We're just getting started, because I found that I have a whole softball team worth of girls, parts of me that needed to be integrated, be healed and integrated back into my wholeness. And it is us that actually created this separation within ourselves. It is our own self that did all of this self-rejection. And so it is up to us to bring these parts back to ourselves. Because all that was there was the divine nature. And as we experienced life, it was just like we fragmented ourselves all over
right.
the place, as a way of trying to cope with ourselves, with our experience. And so it's time to bring all of those parts back, because they're all necessary. They're all, it's part of your wholeness, of
right.
your fullness of what you were before you created all of this separation within yourself. So it's a magnificent journey, and you really have to want to do the work. you have to want to reclaim these parts of you that are, and they're acting up all the time, and they're sabotaging your life, because they need to be healed and they want your attention, and we've learned not to pay attention to these parts of ourselves, and so I had lived in denial and numbness for so long that I didn't realize I needed to integrate all of these parts that were wounded. So it is an amazing healing process when you do this, and you have to do it with divine love, because that's the only way it really gets healed. So I want to move along a little more, because I think we have a couple more things on here.
Oh, okay.
So the next part is the way we cultivate a harmonious environment within our whole complex self is by adapting to the grace that is always provided for you. And this happens when you trust and deeply understand divine unconditional love. And that's really what we're talking about, is creating a harmonious environment for all your aspects to come back together.
Right. Right. In one of the techniques that we do is you have a meeting with different parts of the self, and then within the meeting, the different parts can all express themselves, and within the meeting is that it's however a person, that guiding part, that soulful part of you that actually can be the guide for all the other parts, and it really is allowing that part to be present and talk to them and tell them what the truth is, because it is interesting, because all of the parts of ourselves believe that they're doing the best they can for the whole. So a part that's acting out, that's belligerent, that even a deeply wounded part that might become violent in a person, that part is doing what it believes is best. Mm-hmm. And it just is, in many ways, misguided. So the more we can connect, I think, through the love in our hearts with the truth, the more we can start to bring those parts back in and realize that our discussion has made me think also of divine order. Mm-hmm. It is understanding that everything's happening for a reason and for our very best, even if we can't see it in the moment. You're talking about things being harmonious, and I agree. What I've noticed for us is that over the years, our immediate kind of lives have become more and more harmonious. The place we live, the people who were around us. We used to receive a lot more criticism than we do now. And I attribute it to that we're just in a much more harmonious space, and we don't attract that same kind of really belligerence and meanness. There are a lot of people, and we also, I guess we don't pay as much attention to it, but I've looked back over my life, and I feel like even the things that I didn't think were in my best interest were. Mm-hmm. And there are challenges. My brother died, and that was a huge challenge, my only brother. And he was an alcoholic too. Mm-hmm. And looking back, I know in my own being, I know that it was the right thing for him. He was just, he had no other reason to live at the time other than wanting more alcohol. And that was just not enough. So I can understand that. And I also can understand that having to confront that loss really strengthened me in a way that I needed that strength. Mm-hmm. And so those things that are challenging, we have to see that those are divine too. Mm-hmm. That it's not always just fun and games. And when those big challenges come, we have to allow ourselves to go through them and do it without kicking and screaming. The more we kick and scream and resist what's happening, the worse it is. Mm-hmm.
certainly is. It's beautiful sharing, Jane. That is always understanding that there's a divine order going on and that your life is perfectly guided and written. The whole world is. And knowing that you can keep trusting even though things don't make sense. Getting to a point where you don't have to keep asking God, why is this happening? Just knowing that all is well, even though everything looks upside down,
Mm-hmm.
that there is so much more expansive view that you're not privy to at the moment, or maybe will never be in this human form. And then it is really deeply trusting. And that's what the last sentence is this happens when you trust and deeply understand divine unconditional love. And that needs to be taught to you from within, because each person's going to have their own truth about their own journey. And it is important for you to get that information from inside of yourself.
Right.
So that you understand what your particular journey is about. It is different from other people's.
Right. And I feel one of my things that I feel is really important is that people take their guidance from within and not, and this is an area that can be controversial, I suppose. There are many, I'm sure, gifted psychics out there and people who help to guide people, but hearing something about yourself, like, well, a psychic told me, and we have people tell me, well, this psychic told me I had a past life here and this happened and that, really I'm this kind of a person. And I hear it and I can just, it's a bunch of words that are going through. And I avoid taking that step beyond guiding people to the point of them if they're asking me for their truth, I won't provide it because we have to provide it to ourselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense to you, and that happened actually in our class just recently, one of our programs where I was talking with a student and we were using muscle testing, kinesiology to access different information for the purpose of healing. And she wanted me to access information to find out if it was right for her to pursue a certain kind of a relationship with another person, that she was conflicted herself, and she wanted me to tell her, through my guidance, what was the right thing for her to do, and I refused. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel it's just something that I feel is really important because you can feel the difference, like you were saying. And I think everybody knows that too. If you know it in your own heart, why is it that that's such a common phrase? Follow your heart. You know in your own heart what's right. Right. And if someone is saying something about you to you that you're not certain of, let it be. But, don't feel like you have to follow something just because someone else tells you, like they're the authority and they know better. Mm-hmm.
It's so amazing. That's amazing wisdom. Nobody knows better than you do. You have your own guru inside. God's living inside of you. If you
right.
And you go inside and ask, and then wait to listen and wait. Be patient. It will come to you. And I could give you an example of, at one point after I had woken up and I started learning about the Akashic records, right? And I said, ooh, I would like to learn some more. I want to know about that part, other parts of my experience. And Jesus said, no, I don't want you to do that. And he explained to me, he said, I will show you what all you need to know. And so he probably showed me, 4 or 5 vignettes of stories of past life. And this is all you need to know. And I don't want you getting distracted by it. and because it will. I don't want you getting lost in thinking about other experiences and whatever. And so for me, that was not the right thing for me to do, but I wouldn't have known that. But something inside of me is going, oh, this is interesting. You know, I'm going to go check it out. And he's saying, no, that's not for you. So
Mm-hmm.
this is why you go inside and you learn what what is your path supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and I think I feel that, I believe that too, and I think it's interesting. The way I say it, it's like we receive on a need to know basis, and
Yeah.
some things we just don't need to know, and I let it go. You know, to me, it's like I don't need to know everything about everything, and I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to be present and to realize my purpose and fulfill our mission and enjoy life. And there are some things that I've found out about my past and some things I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Right. And then you find out it's all an illusion anyway, and that none of it you're
Right.
playing around in a field that doesn't even exist. And instead of just saying, okay, I'm here, I need to be present. What is it? What is my next step? And not getting stuck in all the, the bling out there. All the bling
Right.
wants to pull you inside, out of the inside.
Right.
So here's the last paragraph. As you develop the ability to integrate kindness into your own being, then it becomes more of a state of being versus an action and easily shared with others. So it'd be rather than a forced kindness because that is what you think you should be. Your kindness is more genuine and authentic because your vibration has shifted into a kinder you, into your divine nature. So grace is always holding you as you learn how to believe, feel, and embody it. Grace is part of your divine nature. Grace is kindness, gentleness, compassion, and forgiveness. That's a lot in that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, well, it is part of the journey to be kind to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Such an important part. And it's interesting because it also is a choice, which is interesting because we have a power in our intention. Like if we intend to live and create a reality within us and around us that is characterized by kindness, then I think even the mind goes to work to make that happen too. So it made me think, and I don't know if I'm off track here, but made me think. I read this book one time. It was called Choosing Easy World. And it is like choosing to live in a world where everything is easy. Mm-hmm. And I started, also, I guess I had my own variation on it, that I want to live with joy and ease. Mm-hmm. And I confirmed that in my own mind that is my intention, to live with joy and ease. And you could say kindness. It all, to me, it's all one thing, because really it's all just different aspects of love, different ways we can connect with the energy of love. And it is eventually, in the end, then you're in a flow with the divine. That would be the way I would describe it. Your presence, the reason you want to be present is you want to be in the flow with the divine, because that is where truth is. And that's the way that life becomes easy, and just in that gentle flow.
I totally agree. I ask for that as well. My intention is for joy and ease and grace. So this is a process, and earlier on, what God mentioned was not to be hostile with yourself, is not to be forceful. It's learning to have grace and kindness and gentleness as you're growing and learning. And I had mentioned before also that that was difficult for me because I was so used to putting a hammer to myself. And this is, I'm going to force myself to learn this or to do this or to transform this, or and you can't do it that way. I'm trying to save you from, if you're anything like me, I'm trying to save you from going down that path. And that was just a childhood way of getting myself to to control myself. And that needed to be shifted. So you can set intentions to be kind while you're in the process of allowing all of the spiritual wisdom and the connection to keep transforming you until you start to feel that that is more of your nature than it is that I have to set an intention for it. That it just will take over as you become more of your true nature.
Right. Well, you could say and it is the difference, we call it sometimes the difference between knowledge and being. Like you can know things, like I know I want to be more present and that I want more kindness and I want, these, I know those things. And we know actually that life is more pleasant when we focus on elevating our perspective and feeling happy and grateful and all of those things. We know that. But actually being that is a different thing. And it's aiming, the more we aim for it and find ways to be in that place, the more it does become part of our being, to the point where then it just is more, not always automatic, but much more automatic. And it's like returning, you could say, to that centered place, centered in the truth of who we are, becomes much easier and faster. You don't get lost, how sometimes you think, well, gee, I was lost in this, whatever, this momentum for days. Well, the time becomes shorter to the point, and then you remember, and it's like, okay, I'm going to just bring myself back here in my body in the moment and return to this state of wholeness again.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure if I'm exactly on topic with it, but I mean, all of this is very kind of well, it's all connected, so maybe it doesn't matter really.
No, it was on topic. It was beautiful. And it's saying the same thing, is that as you go through this transformation process, it's being kind to yourself, having grace for yourself,
right,
and knowing that you're being transformed every moment of the day, whether you recognize it or not. And that the more you connect into divine love, as that's a go-to all day long, as much as you can, it will change your life in unimaginable ways. It will change the way you feel. You will start to have the joy that you have been searching for, because you keep tapping into it. It's a magnificent process.
Right. I agree.
I'm grateful to be awake and understanding it. So we are out of time.
It went really fast, didn't it? Yeah, we're definitely out of time. So fast.
Yes. So can you please tell people how to connect with you, Jane?
Oh, okay. We have a very large website. It's at the name of the website, the overall name is gettingthrough.org, which is gettingthru.org. And it's best to / the main page is gettingthrough.org /holistic. There are different sections. There's also, to find out about Awakenings Institute and the Dream, Awakenings Dream, which to me is a very beautiful guided, or it was downloaded kind of poetic dream. It's gettingthrough.org/awakenings, and you can find out about our institute. I think those are probably the two main places to start, and you can look around. It's very large.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have a video cast on Enlightened World Network on Sundays is it 4:30?
Yes, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. And this week, actually, we're going to be talking about divine order, my husband, Phillip, and I. So people might want to connect with us there. And we certainly appreciate having people join us.
That would be wonderful.
So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm sure we'll be together again.
Yes.
Something, it's very enjoyable. And I want to thank all our listeners for hanging with us and all your beautiful comments. And we're so grateful to have you here and helping us make this show possible. Also, Saturday, I just wanted to remind people that I'll be doing my masterclass at 2:00 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, July 18th. And it will be on healing the wounded child. So if you would like to join me, I'd love to have you. And keep tuning into Enlightened World Network, because we have awesome shows every single day. And we're grateful to have this community and share it with you. So we say goodbye for now, knowing we are one love, protected and held in divine order by our Creator. Go out this day in this awareness and allow God's peace and joy to occupy every thought. Lead with your heart and welcome everyone home, for all are loved. God bless you, and I hope you have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.